I was going through a divorce. I was losing my title of being a wife, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to lose that. So that identity was falling away, but I didn't want it to fall away. So in my mind, I was like, well, I'll just leave this planet physically. But what's actually happening is I need to learn how to let that transform out of me, recognizing that I can still stay here in the physical, that this whole body and soul and mind and everything is so valuable, that it's just this magical thing that I can learn how to let those things go and transform the identity that needs to go away, not the physical body. And that's some of the things that I teach in the book, Surviving Suicidal Ideation, that I co-authored with a trauma-informed therapist. And it's basically a workbook, and I have my art in there as well. And it has a lot of my story in there. It's published by the Swedenborg Foundation. And the reason why this was the first thing I did was because I wanted people that didn't want to tell anybody to be able to get this book and start working on their own, kind of quietly, secretively, to see if this is something that resonates with them, to try to get them help as fast and quickly as possible. We need more content, programs, podcasts, and anything that we can build to help support people so they can maybe share their story or go get help if they're experiencing this.
Thank you for sharing that, Gina. What differentiates depression from suicidal ideation? One can be very down, you're going through a divorce, or you're going through some illness, you're going through a repetition of patterns from trauma in the past. I would definitely want to know from you, Gina, maybe a bit about your background, if you're open to sharing. Because there has to be something that either in the mind or in the body or in spirit that leads to that particular thought or repetition of thought that you no longer need to be here. Or this is because there's so many options that are laid out in front of us. And there are people usually around us, even if we feel alone, because I know you can have people around you, but still feel alone. So what are the kinds of things that you would say really differentiate that perception of this is the only way to the perception of there's nothing I can do, that helplessness? Maybe describing some of your background would also help in this. Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes show. I am your host, Bolaabimbola. I am a frequency alchemist, energy practitioner, and life coach. And Daily Soul Bytes is really about interviewing guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs who have shared their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest, Gina Cavalier, all the way from California. Welcome to the show, Gina.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet y'all.
Gina is a wonderful person who has transformed her life. And I want to read a bit about her bio before we start. Gina Cavalier is a mental health advocate, an author, an illustrator, a filmmaker, an artist, a speaker, a spiritual teacher, and the host of the Liberated Healer Podcast. Gina has written 3 books, and she is a media veteran who is building a mega wellness brand with a base passion for assisting with suicide trauma, especially suicide ideation, with positive content, a web and mobile app, a documentary, and a non-profit. A very powerful industry that you're building there, Gina. And I think it's really worth us talking about the suicidal ideation. I would love you to explain what suicidal ideation is, just to define it for a lot of us who are not really familiar with that aspect of it. This is when, that personality characteristic or personality experience, a personal experience, how that plays out. And then I'd love to know more about the book and the work that you do.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, suicidal ideation is a unique area of mental health. And it's one of the reasons why I get up every morning and do what I do, because it's not truly understood. And just to understand where I come from on the angle is that I suffered with suicidal ideation from the age of 8 from childhood trauma. And I finally decided that I wanted to transform that I wanted to have a different life experience. and I did everything I could to heal it. And it did take kind of a long path for me, but I finally got to the place where I've completely transformed that I can't even think of hurting myself. It's been completely programmed out of my ecosystem. And as soon as I start to go down that route, something switches in me and says, that's not you anymore. And I don't have to go down the depths and the pits of suicidal ideation. But what is interesting about suicidal ideation is that from the majority of the people that I've spoken to, which is thousands, that suicidal ideation isn't like depression or bipolar disorder or a lot of the other mental health disorders. It's something that comes and goes in bigger waves. It's usually something that is either some kind of old unhealed wound or some massive anxiety issue that they might have. And when a life conflict comes to the surface, say a big life event for the majority, like a divorce, or you're going to lose a job, or you lost a friendship, or some other big thing, you start to go through these different phases of now proving that you're not worthy of certain things in your life. And you go through this whole ideation process, and everybody is different once that happens. And the window is not months and months. It's kind of like days, maybe hours, maybe weeks. So that is why people don't want to talk about it, that there's a stigma about it, because they don't want to notify the world and their family and their doctors that they have suicidal ideation when it's not a consistent hum in their life. So they go, oh, I'm not like that right now. I feel great. I feel fine. And majority of the people that know me, this is my same personality that I had when I had suicidal ideation. Nobody would have ever known that I had suicidal ideation. I was very positive, uplifting. I'm full of love and compassion. But when a serious life event would come, I would just go down, and I just would think, this is confirmation. I don't belong here. I always felt that I was outside the circle of life that everybody got to enjoy. I always felt like I wasn't a part of a family or a group or unworthy of love. And that's what I needed to transform. So it's a consistent, when you're in those patterns though, it becomes very dangerous very quickly. That is also another difference than a slow humming depression or some kind of a chemical imbalance. It's dangerous. It can go to 5 in a heartbeat, and when you make a snap decision. And I've found that the majority also of people that are suffering, they are wanting to release something in them. They want that part of them to die, or they recognize that that part of them is transforming. Like say, for example, when I was going through a divorce, I was losing my title of being a wife, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to lose that. So that identity was falling away, but I didn't want it to fall away. So in my mind, I was like, well, I'll just leave this planet physically. But what's actually happening is I need to learn how to let that transform out of me, recognizing that I can still stay here in the physical, that this whole body and soul and mind and everything is so valuable, that it's just this magical thing that I can learn how to let those things go and transform the identity that needs to go away, not the physical body. And that's some of the things that I teach in the book, Surviving Suicidal Ideation, that I co-authored with a trauma-informed therapist. And it's basically a workbook, and I have my art in there as well. And it has a lot of my story in there. It's published by the Swedenborg Foundation. And the reason why this was the first thing I did was because I wanted people that didn't want to tell anybody to be able to get this book and start working on their own, kind of quietly, secretively, to see if this is something that resonates with them, to try to get them help as fast and quickly as possible. We need more content, programs, podcasts, and anything that we can build to help support people so they can maybe share their story or go get help if they're experiencing this.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Gina. What differentiates depression from suicidal ideation? One can be very down, you're going through a divorce, or you're going through some illness, you're going through a repetition of patterns from trauma in the past, I would definitely want to know from you, Gina, maybe a bit about your background if you're open to sharing. Because there has to be something that either in the mind or in the body or in spirit that leads to that particular thought or repetition of thought that you no longer need to be here. Or this is because there's so many options that are laid out in front of us. And there are people usually around us, even if we feel alone, because I know you can have people around you, but still feel alone. So what are the kinds of things that you would say really differentiate that perception of this is the only way to the perception of there's nothing I can do, that helplessness? Maybe describing some of your background would also help in this.
Okay. Well, I'm not a medical professional, but I do have a lot of expertise in this. So I just want to highlight that. So I had an abusive father, and I was also neglected from a very early age. So I was this being that just wanted to be loved and cuddled and explore the world like a child does, but I was left alone for long periods of time. And then when I was around people, I was being abused as physically, and mentally and emotionally from a very early age. So, and when my parents got a divorce, I was 8 years old, and I went to go live with my father, who was the actual physical abuser. So it was just me and him. And I learned how to survive in that setting as a child who was unsafe. So I survived it. But what happened is and then I would look at the world around me and see normal families and wonder why I didn't get that normal family or that loving mother. And so I had these wounds that made me feel like I was unworthy of that kind of love, and why something was about me that was wrong with me, that I was unworthy of that love. And then what happens as I grew as an adult, all the survival skills I took with me as an adult. And what I was doing is I was recreating the same patterns over and over again. I was calling in the same people to me because it's what I knew. So I was calling in abusive and alcoholic husbands and friends and environment. And then I was trying to use the same skills as a child. And what it was creating was toxic life. And all it was saying to me over and over again was, see, you're not worthy. You're not worthy. And I did not realize that I was the one that was calling this in. So what I needed to do was to put the brakes on, really break down where my wounding was. I did get some therapy, get some support, and unpack the wound. And what I realized is I did not have self-love. I loved everyone else. I love my job. I love my animals. I love my friends. I love my partners. I didn't love me. I was the very, very last. I didn't care if I got hurt. I didn't care if I got tired. I didn't care if I got abused in a way. And so what happened is I needed to find a way to love myself. And when you love yourself, once that transforms, you fall back. I fell back in love with myself. I fell in love with myself. Like actually, like every little part of me, I get tingles when I talk about it, because I just was like, oh, you're so amazing. You're just this beautiful spirit. And I mean, now once that happens, you don't want to hurt yourself. The idea of leaving your physical body is like, that goes out of your ecosystem, because I would never hurt my body. That's how I first transformed it. And then what happened is I kind of felt like I didn't know what my purpose was. And my first husband was a famous singer. So he used to get on me about, how come you don't know what you want to do in life? Because I would try all different kinds of things, right? And I felt shame in that. I felt like I didn't have a life purpose, and I felt shameful. And a lot of people feel that way about not knowing their life purpose, right? And so he would come down to me. I've always known what I want to do in my life. How come you don't know what you want to do in your life? I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was another bad thing about me. And so now, and I'm 54 now, right? So the last 4 years has just been truly magical, when I've had the full transformation into love for myself. But what I found was my life purpose was hidden in my pain and in my healing of that pain. And then my life purpose showed up. And so now I do get to roll out of bed excited every single day. You know, I have hard days, very hard days. I have conflict constantly. You know, that's life. But now I know how to deal with conflict, and obstacles don't overwhelm me. They used to take me down. You know, we know when our instincts tell us when we're going to lose our job, or our instincts will tell us when we have no money to pay our bills, or all this stuff, right? And that used to take me down. That used to just be like, I would go into a fear mode and all the wounds would get activated again. And then the record would start to play in my mind of the whatever my negative thinking was, and everybody's is different. And it would just start to play like a record. And it also almost becomes like a friend, because it's a secret only you know. And this friend, even though it's toxic and it's heavy, it knows your secret. And so there's a part of a control thing in there. And that's what I learned through therapy, is that I had like a control over a certain part of me that nobody knew about. So there's a lot of different angles. But once you get healed, what I've seen with people is that they don't have to live with this being creeped up, like hanging on their back, like it's just going to always be there. And they fall in love with themselves. And usually something is revealed that they never knew was inside of them. And now they have a different view of life. And what happens also is when you start to heal, it just spills out like a drop of water into a pond. It just starts to spread to the people around you. And now you call in better relationships. So I don't have those toxic relationships anymore because I love myself. So once they start to show up, I graciously bow out of them. I don't have to absorb them anymore. I don't have to, it's not me disappointing them or judging them either. It's just always putting myself first and just saying, this just isn't working for me. I let you go with love. And, you know, and now I can become more productive because I'm not sitting in judgment of myself and of others. I'm not criticizing myself and others. I'm, you know, more in the vibration of being productive and filling this life, this day as much as possible, or just relaxing and enjoying the flowers around me. And when you are so depressed and have suicidal ideation, you can't see flowers. You can't see a blade of grass. You can't see the essence. You are in a hole. And we want to lift that hole off of people. And first they need to know is they can heal this. They don't have to live the rest of their life with this, which is not something I've heard anybody else in this space say or talk about. And that gave me hope when I realized I don't have to live with this my whole life. I'm in my 50s. I feel like I'm so old already, right? And I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm going to live the rest of my life without suicidal ideation. I know I'm not leaving this planet with my own hands. And that is freaking amazing.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Gina, and the vulnerability that you show. Because I think, you know, we will always have ups and downs. We'll always have those times when, you know, we're enjoying all the outcomes that we see. And there'll be times when there's a lot of non-preferred outcomes that are unfolding in our reality. And I always think it's about our perspectives, you know, whether we want to familiarize ourselves with lower perspectives or higher perspectives, lower perspectives of fear and higher perspectives of love. And that's what my book, Daily Soul Bytes, is about. Daily Soul Bytes is now available anywhere books are sold online, also in paperback and audiobook. And it's really about understanding the perspectives that are within us, whether they're lower perspectives of fear and survival and threat, or higher perspectives of love, forgiveness, because these perspectives all exist within us. And what we align to, what we become familiar to, is what really we will act on and manifest in our day-to-day. So familiarity with the perspectives that we want to hold is so key. Because when we are having those high perspectives, those high experiences in our day-to-day, we will find ourselves leaning more towards love, expanding love. And whatever we focus on, Whatever we put our energy on is what is going to expand and continue to expand. And even when we have low perspectives and we lean towards love, we will find ourselves seeing opportunities around us that allow us to expand on the love we're leaning on. So this is so key for us to become much more focused. This is why self-awareness, allowing ourselves to understand the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the sensations that we have, whether they're high or low, allows us to align to what we prefer. And it's not about right or wrong. It's about a personal preference, understanding self, understanding how we can be more authentic in our own self. So I love the way you've transformed those, those experiences, those challenges, because trauma is something that can be a lifetime thing. But the decision that we make, the dedication that we put into our spiritual practice, into our transformation, really allows us to transform. So I love what you said about nothing is meant to be permanent. There is this ego so that is constantly changing. We do not have to stay in a place that is not giving us that fulfillment that we see. So that is so important. I would love to know more about the modalities that you used to transform that state of being that you are in into this new state of being that you're enjoying now, Gina.
Thank you for that question. So I lean in. Spirituality is deeply ingrained in me and has helped me knowing that I'm not walking alone. But a lot of times when I talk to general people, I lean more into the work of energy, because a lot of people can understand energy and instinct. And when you start to talk about, and it's quantum physics, and when you lean in on that, people really, they are visual. And then they are so physical, right? So sometimes if they don't feel it or see it, they don't truly understand it. So I feel like when I explain it in energetic terms, they can get it a little bit quicker, because spiritual is so etheric, right? So we have 50 trillion cells in our body and it makes up the mass of our physical body. And every single one of those cells holds energy. So you can either like flood that energy with high vibration of colors running, vibrant colors running through it, or you can sadly through different means, like say drug addictions and different things like that, they can turn sort of like a muted color and almost cloudy. So the whole process is, if you can lighten up all these energy centers and activate them, then it will help to fluff off the stuff that is no longer serving you. So the one number thing that I always teach people first off is grounding, or earthing. And the reason that we don't, people sometimes say, well, if this was so natural, how come we have to, imagine doing this now? The thing is that, about 200 years ago or more, as we became more modern and we continue to get more modern, our energy systems that we're talking about, with all the cement that we have, the radio frequencies that go through our bodies, the Wi-Fi frequencies that go through our bodies, the unorganic food that we're eating, all the different things that we know is in a modern society is stopping us from ionizing to the earth and to reset our body naturally. So having these tools in place at any time, anywhere, puts you in the driver's seat of healing right away. And so my favorite way, everybody has different method of grounding. You can put your feet in like sand or on the grass or anything like that. And that will also start to automatically ionize your body to the earth and releasing those heavier energies. But I like to imagine that a grounding cord is coming off my hips 2 inches wider than my hips. And I create this grounding cord and anything that I like a willow tree, an oak tree, anything that I need in my life at the moment. And I send that all the way. I imagine it burrowing through the earth, through the roots, through the lakes, through the crystal caves, all the way to the center of the earth, and connecting there right where the lava is. And I imagine it's hollow on the inside. And I ask my body to release anything that's no longer serving me. Boom. Because a lot of meditation techniques that I've seen are great because you're doing a focused effort for a result. But the one thing there, a lot of them are missing is a grounding cord. So it's sometimes what it's doing is it bringing a lot of wounding or thoughts or emotions out into your aura and space, but it's not releasing them. And so if you don't know where to put all those energies, sometimes they will hang out in your environment. So I always ground. And also you can ground dogs, your projects, your home, your car, your business. You can, anything that's feeling like it's got this stuck energy in it. You can, when I drive by, instead of judging, maybe say people in my hometown that are struggling, if I see homeless or things like that, and I can't really do anything about it at the moment, I ground them because it's spiritually almost like a prayer. So that's the best thing you can do for somebody. Release the things that aren't serving them. Send them love. Try not to send the judgment, but the grounding is the number one. I have PTSD. I have anxiety. First thing I do when I lay in bed, I just put that grounding cord on. And if some people need to actually feel it, test it on an animal, because you will. I have an anxious dog who was abused, and he vibrates. He a lot of times he will just start to shake and like have this like intense energy. Do what I just mentioned, put a grounding cord on him, feel the energy, and then put the grounding cord on him, and all of a sudden that buzzing will go away. And so if you need to understand that it's really working. And when you see that happen to an animal, you're like, wow, this is real, So grounding is my number one. And then make sure you call back your energy. I do that with a golden sun, because that golden bright light, there's so many warm, yummy things inside that. So I call a golden sun over my head, recalling all my life force energy. And I could do it through a project or a relationship or anything that I want. And I call back my energy. So I think of myself as a glass, constantly releasing what I don't want and filling it up with what I want over and over again.
I love that. Now, those are very practical modalities, groundwork, grounding as well as, just increasing the frequency of vibration of the cells within us. Because, this is something about how sometimes we may have a diagnosis and we may hold that diagnosis for life. The impact of that diagnosis on our experience in our day to day will depend on what we do with that. It's not what happens, but what we do with that particular diagnosis. So sometimes we will experience a different day based on the modalities that we use in our toolkit. And I always say it's not just one or two or three things, because what modalities you used last year may not work this year. So being open and curious to really be aware of how am I feeling today? What is working for me today? How am I vibrating? And we know when we are low. We know when we talk to someone and we feel low, and when we talk to someone and we feel really inspired. And we can begin to be much more aware of those different sensations within us and take responsibility. Because a lot of the times we think it's because someone has done something. Yes, they may have been something we reflected to ourselves to actually identify something within us, a part of us that we actually need to just transform. And this is how we see life really determines how we enjoy life, whether we're living in heaven or living in hell, literally. So the perspectives that we hold are really key. And I also wanted to say that, grounding, because I also have a grounding mat, which I use, in bed, and I also go out in nature. So because the electrons from nature really help us to balance at a very cellular level. So it's really important for us to understand these modalities, whether it's energy modalities or mental modalities, to bring us to that place of center. Because it's when we're in that place of center, we can truly begin to see the things around us in a different way. We're in an observer role. We're not focusing on the negatives, and we're not really attached to the positives either, because sometimes that creates resistance. When we only want positive things in our lives, we invalidate those moments that are there for our own growth. So it's really about us being in that kind of, neutral, non-judgmental space. But how to get there? To get to that place takes dedication, takes a zero tolerance to non-authenticity, a zero tolerance to anything taking us out of love. And I loved what you said about self-love. And I do want to focus on this because sometimes people see self-love as being selfish, and that creates a resistance because, we'll say, oh, how can I focus on myself? How will I be perceived? Will I be seen as for instance, you're in a relationship and your partner says to you, I no longer want to see you wearing high heels, or I no longer want to see you wearing mini skirts, or don't put on makeup, things like that. And it's about, yes, you do want to please your partner. You do want to not seem as if you're not compromising. But, so sometimes standing up for our own self or our own desires, our own needs can be tricky sometimes. So that issue of self-love, because that is what we need when we're in that suicidal ideation, where we are really thinking that we're not worthy. We know this self doesn't need to exist. This self is of no value. Coming to value that self, coming to love that self. Love cannot be a dirty word, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, I do
encourage people to get to that place.
Yeah, we all come into this world with themes and gifts, and each one are different. So, if you see like a channeler and you go, oh, I want to learn how to channel, but it really isn't your particular theme or gift, you're going to struggle to be exactly that same gift as another person. So it's actually fun to find out what your theme and gift is. And one of my gifts is I'm a cipher, which is why I wrote 2 books this year, which means that Spirit sends me messages and I'm supposed to dictate them and put them into work, which makes sense of why I've always wanted to be a writer my whole life. And a lot of people told me, you'll never get published. You'll never be a writer. You don't have the education and all this stuff. And then I would actually delay my writing and try other things. And then always go back to the writing because it was something inside of me that I was like, but I like it. So, but the one thing I was writing yesterday or the other day was a message came in through Jesus, and it said, love shouldn't hurt. Like there's no pain in love. If you're feeling pain in your situation with your loving relationship, as in they're judging you or are they telling you not to wear something or whatever, they're going to love you exactly how you are. It shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? That's how you can tell that maybe this isn't like the exactly right path that you person that you might have. But that person might have an opportunity for, again, a lesson in it. So, it really helped me when I started seeing almost all situations as lessons to help with my spirit, with my growth. And so when you look at it as a lesson, almost like a school, then you don't get so overwhelmed. You're like, wow, I'm going to learn some stuff in this. It might not be fun. And I'll take a recent example. Like I had an emergency with my house and I had to move out. And there was mold, and my landlord was really mad. She started blaming me, and it was very stressful. I didn't have anywhere to live. I was in the middle of writing a book, and I told her, I said, "Hey, I look forward to like figuring this out with you." And she was just wanting to do the conflict constantly. And I just said, "Hey, here's my thoughts," and did it. And through the whole thing, I stayed, instead of going into fear and anxiety that there was a legal situation, we both had to get lawyers, like it was a legal situation. I just remained this even keel and just saying, hey, this is just, I'm educating, I'm learning, and I'm always going to remain positive. And even her lawyer, all of a sudden was like, how does Gina stay so positive? It was because I didn't let myself go down. I didn't let it go down there. I recognized it was in my life. And I was going to learn something out of it. But at the end of it, I moved into a better situation that was much cheaper, that was going to let me continue writing my books, where the other way I might have had to get a full-time job because I was almost couldn't afford it. So it was almost like Spirit ushered it in for me to make my life better. And I didn't go into resistance and fear and stay up all night and stop eating and get all panicky. I walked through it, and it closed out in 30 days. I got a settlement. I mean, it just worked out in my favor, so it just showed me that even in those really stressful situations that shake my foundation of my home, and people are like, what are you going to do? I mean, I didn't know where I was going to live, literally. I was able, and it just showed me that through practice, I was able to get to that point of, hey, this is going to be an interesting, maybe a little painful lesson, but I don't have to let it take me to the end of the earth. And it worked out in my favor, which if you let go of the resistance of having to be right, the resistance of, all that stuff, it might actually be something good for you. It's hard to imagine that when you're going through something bad, that actually at the end, it might be way better, that's something way better, because we only have so much space in our life, right? And if I release things that aren't serving me, I can bring in something better. And that's a process that if we get more healthier in thinking about that, like again, that class, it's like, that relationship really isn't fulfilling me. They judge me. They're always, the X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. And that's really, maybe I should let that go, even though it's going to be scary and painful. Then all of a sudden, something that's way better is filled with that space, but you have to make space for that other thing. So if we get more in the habit of that process, and that leads to suicidal ideation. It does lead to that stuff, or depression or fears. You know what I mean? It's one of the number one things that scares people. I'm on a Facebook group with 1.4 million suicide prevention, and almost all the people on there are suicidal, and they'll just get on there and saying, hey, I'm having a bad day. I need help today. And a bunch of us jump in and say, hey, what do you need? Sending you love and support. This is 911 worldwide. And this is preventable. So we need to have these conversations. We need to bring levity. If you hear it in my voice, I don't talk about it in fear, because I'm not going to give it fear. I'm bringing levity towards it. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, I feel sorry for the people who have already lost people. But now, more than ever, we have to fight for those people that have already lost their lives, or the families that are already in grief, and have to say no more. We can have these conversations. We're going to put we're a tribe, even across the pond, we're a tribe. And we're going to put our arms together and raise up our community. And that's what you and I and many people are authentically, obviously doing. Bringing levity to the conversation is so important.
It takes courage to surrender to to the unknown. Because what we know may be toxic, and I love what you said about it may be toxic, but we're familiar with it, so we focus on it and we expand it. But the unknown place, that place of love, is sometimes very unknown, and it takes courage for us to actually move in that direction. And this is why I love to share inspiration and encouragement, so that those who may resonate with this may be inspired, may feel encouraged to actually reach out to using different toolkits, modalities, developing resilience, developing that trust of the unknown, which we all have to do. No matter how old you are, I'm going to be 60 soon, and I still have that unknown that comes up in my day to day. And it's about really coming to that place where we are enjoying the inspiration around us. We're leaning towards it more and more. So yes, thank you for joining me today, Gina. It's really been lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to leave on one thing, and this is on my website, but it was something that I learned when I was a young girl, that you are the joy that nothing else is. Your soul is the most valuable thing you own. Take care of it.
No, I love that. Yes. It is the most valuable thing, and it allows us to experience heaven on earth. I think when we truly connect. Where can people find you, Gina, when they want to connect?
The Liberated Healer is my brand, and it's to help liberate people through their developing their own healing plan. Liberatedhealer.com, GinaCavalier.com, or on Instagram or anywhere. You can find me all over the place, Gina Cavalier. I'm readily accessible, and you can leave me a message. And, I have one-on-one healings and that I do to help teach people my process if they want a one-on-one counseling through the book and the information. So it's on my website, liberatedhealer.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you.
I do want to encourage our audience and listeners to connect with Gina with a book, to get a copy of her book, and to also connect with her through her website if you do need that lived-in experience. There's nothing like having someone who has had lived-in experience of what you are also going through. Those connections are not coincidences, so that's really important. And to also encourage you to get a copy of Daily Soul Bytes if you haven't got one already. It's really about understanding the perspectives within us so we can align from that empowered place. And I do want to thank all those who have joined us today on Daily Soul Bytes, and to encourage you to subscribe and to join me on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes show. Bye-bye.